What is up, guys? 70 Savage here. Today we have a very exciting day. We are going over one of the most important aspects of my van build, and that is the swiveling table. So if you are new to the channel, I have been converting this Sprinter van right here into a full-time tiny home over the past year or so, and it is almost done. It is this close to being 100% complete. I have been documenting every step along the way. This is one of the videos that I've been missing for quite some time now on the swivel table, but there are videos on everything. I'm talking the electrical system, the whole sliding bed system, the shower that's most recently installed, the kitchen galley unit, blah, 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 blah. There are tons of videos on the channel. Check it out if you like this one. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right, guys, so here we have the swiveling table. It is one of the most versatile aspects of the van. I use it for all sorts of different stuff. It can be swiveled over to this chair here to be used as a desk. This is where I work most of the time, and my coworkers can always get a glimpse of where I'm currently staying at, or my black insulated window cover, which makes me look like I'm in some sort of hacker van most of the time. It can also be swiveled back over to the bench area here and used, if I turn the laptop around, as a kind of different work location, or most of the time this is where I end up eating. And if I decide to get a little bit more motivated and cook something other than frozen food in the microwave, I can convert to Chef Savage and have an additional cooking area here alongside the kitchen galley unit. To be clear, that last one has not happened yet. So the next question might be, okay, this is pretty cool when you're parked. It obviously is pretty versatile. It has a few uses, but what happens when you want to venture out past 10 feet from your house and actually go on the road to adventure? I've actually seen lots of different creative ways for stowing this table. Some people take the tabletop off and stow it next to the seat here. Others will have a spot to put it in their essentially garage. That's what we call the space underneath the bed. I'm sure there are a ton of other different ways to stow this mechanism. I, however, am much lazier than that. What I do is simply loosen the mounting attachment and collapse it down onto the bench, push it into the fabric a little bit, and then re-tighten. It becomes pretty sturdy here, and even when I'm ripping around corners at maximum van velocity, it doesn't end up going anywhere. My apologies, guys. You may have noticed a brief moment of van authenticity in the first few clips there. I always make sure 100% of the time to make my bed and clean up my clothes first thing when I wake up in the morning. So anyways, now that you guys have seen what this thing does, let's go ahead and break it down and figure out how this thing works. So this is probably a good time to mention it. There is indeed a link to this Lagun Table Mount in the description below. Okay, so if you do end up ordering this Lagun Table Mount via the link in the description below, you're gonna get something that looks like this. Well, actually it's gonna come in 3 separate pieces, but you can simply attach them to each other with no tools in a matter of minutes. The second piece that you're going to get is the mounting bracket that I have attached to my bench right here. The actual swiveling mechanism is composed of 3 parts, and they all use the exact same swiveling hardware. Okay, so all 3 of these swivels right here work the exact same way. Essentially, they swivel and unscrew, loosening the bracket so that that mounting point can be attached or reattached. And then if you kind of make it semi-tight like it is right now, it swivels, but it doesn't come off very easily. One cool feature on these little swivels right here is you could pull the bracket out and it doesn't engage the rotation of the bolt essentially. So when I'm doing this and pulling it out, it's not tightening it or loosening it. It's only when I let the handle retract back in that it's actually tightening down the piece. So if you're in a very restricted area, like let's say this one right here, I can still tighten this down. Oh shit, in that case I loosened it. But you can still tighten this down by tightening, pulling out, tightening again, pulling out. Effectively, if you don't have enough space for this thing to spin around 360 degrees, it's still perfectly functional. So as you just saw, this swivel right here controls the height. You can loosen it and bring the table up or down. This one right here controls the swivel in this direction, and this one right here controls the swiveling of the table as it rotates. There is no tabletop right now. I'll get to that in a second. Let's dive into this mounting bracket and how that's actually attached to my bench seat. So in my case, this side of the bench seat here is my toilet. It's a dry flush toilet. It's very, very interesting how it works. There'll probably need to be a whole video just on this toilet. So the Lagun mounting bracket is just bolted directly through the wood paneling. There is a 1/2 inch piece of plywood and there is a 3/4 inch beam. They also send you a piece of 3/4 inch plywood that they request that you use as backing. I did actually use that. It's this piece right here, and that just gives it a little bit of extra thickness, a little bit of extra rigidity to hold all of the weight. So to install this, it's very, very simple. They give you a template. You can mark out the locations of the holes, or you could literally just stick this thing on here, clamp it down so that it's 90 degrees, take a Sharpie, mark the holes. You drill through the holes, you put the bolts through, and you tighten the bolts down. It's pretty simple, just how I like it. So that covers the whole Lagun table mount and everything that's needed to get the swiveling action. You might have noticed we have not yet talked about the tabletop at all. The tabletop is actually not a part of this kit at all. You will not receive any sort of tabletop. So what they do give you is this 8 by 12 inch or so piece of aluminum, and it has 6 little tiny screw holes that you can use to effectively attach any tabletop that you prefer. So in my case, I just took this scrap piece of 3/4 inch plywood that was left over from my upper cabinets. By the way, video on these in the channel, and I just painted it white. It's Baltic birch plywood, so it is pretty sturdy. It's not gonna warp on you or anything. It's still very, very straight. I have 6 screw holes on the bottom side. They line up perfectly with the 6 holes on this aluminum bracket here that comes with the Lagun table mount, and then I just bought these screws. The cool thing about the simplicity of these brackets is I just unswivel that, this piece comes off, and re-screwing the bracket back onto the tabletop is easy as kick. So my tabletop is exactly 33 7/8 inches long. It is 16 5/8 inches wide. And that is honestly about the maximum length that I would make for any tabletop that's gonna go on this Lagun table mount. The reason I say that is because once you get out to this length right here, there's quite a bit of leverage on that table arm. It's still rigid enough to hold like my laptop and stuff, but if I were to like use this to get out of the seat that I'm sitting in right now, it would probably not go very well. When I use this table while sitting on that bench, I do put stuff all over it and I use it as is, but when I'm sitting in the desk position, I do have a trick up my sleeve. The armrest, that's the factory armrest, super, super sturdy armrest, I just let the table rest on the corner of the armrest there, and it actually turns this Lagun table very sturdy. So if you do want something that's kind of long, that's gonna be a full-on desk, and you want it to be extra sturdy, think about hacks like this where you'd support one of the back corners either by putting a little flip out knob on a galley unit or by using your factory armrest. So that is how my tabletop works, but that is just one example. There's tons of cool things that people have done with tabletops for the Lagun table mounts. I've seen tables that fold in on the sides so that you can have kind of a nice little kitchenette table when you need it, and you can fold it outward and have more of a dining table for you and your friends. They actually fabricate some of these Lagun tabletops, and I found a couple of cool ones that I was originally thinking about getting, but ended up not because I had this plywood and it was much cheaper to put some paint on it. But I will put links to those prefabricated tabletops in the description below. And so that brings us to a very interesting topic. Where the heck is the best place to mount your table, and why did I choose to mount mine right there? Well, first off, when choosing where to mount your Lagun table, you need to take into consideration that it does indeed swivel, sometimes in your cabinet like I just showed. It could potentially have a lot of area to swivel, or it could potentially not. And that really depends on where you mount the bracket. I think for most people, it makes sense to mount their Lagun table on either a bench or something that they can sit on. The reason I say that is because if you imagine this bench not being a bench, but being like a closet or something that took up the full vertical space of the van, this table couldn't be there. It could only be over here and to right there. It can only swivel like 5 degrees and be used effectively as a desk. It probably couldn't even be used as a little kitchen side galley unit because this corner obviously would protrude into the closet. If, however, you mount the Lagun table bracket onto something that you can sit on or something that is not very high, it allows the table to reach over that and therefore have quite a large range of motion. Another thing to note is how high you mount the mounting bracket itself. You want to make sure that wherever you put this thing in terms of how high it is off of the floor, makes sense for the intended uses of your table. When I did put it as a helping unit for the kitchen galley, it did not make it to the same height as the galley tabletop. And that's because that's not my primary use case for it. If that is your primary use case and you weren't using it as a desk, you probably wouldn't want to mount it as low as I did. To counter that, they actually sell Lagun Table Mount kits with multiple mounting brackets. If you have multiple brackets, it really opens you up to make the table even more versatile than it already is, because for instance, in my case, I could not only have a bracket right here on the bench seat, I could also put a bracket here on the kitchen galley unit, and therefore the table would rise to the height of the kitchen galley unit. I want to emphasize how important it is that you take into consideration the full range of swivelage of this table and how it's going to look when you put it in your van. So you might want to get an idea for how long of a tabletop you need right off the bat, and just like without even mounting the bracket at all, just carry the tabletop in here and kind of carry it around as if it were swiveling to get an understanding of, okay, is the location that I want to put that mounting bracket going to work, or are there any gotchas that I didn't think about with it colliding into things? So if you're watching this video and you're considering a swivel table for your van, you've probably looked into other table mounting mechanisms. There's lots of different things that van lifers do, one of which being a pillar that mounts directly to the floor and allows you to put a table on top of that. The benefits would be overall strength and stability of that table, although I did hear that sometimes those things aren't super strong. The way that they mount to the floor doesn't make them feel very solid, so it might not be a benefit unless you figure that out. If you do use one of those big pole ones that I was considering, you have to make sure that you are okay having a pole sticking out of your floor at all times. In my case, I'm really glad I didn't go that route because I can just move this thing out of the way, get up and leave. And I do that about 100 times a day when I'm at my desk working. So I think the swivelability of this table and having the arm and the whole swivel mechanism completely out of the way is really important, but it's up to you. There are definitely other mechanisms out there. If you guys have seen a mounting mechanism that you think is really cool, leave that in the comments below, especially if it's a kind of creative one that I may have not heard of before. Very interested in seeing what else is out there. And that, my friends, hopefully covers everything that you could possibly want to know about the Lagun Table Mount. If you do have any other additional questions, don't hesitate to put those in the comments below. I do read every single comment that comes through this channel, and I answer as many of them as possible, other than the ones that are negative. I do not negotiate with terrorists. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you made it this far, don't hesitate to slap that like button below. If you're interested in more content about van life, if you want to see me traveling in this van, if you want to see the eventual van tour, which I'm super excited about, slap that subscribe button below and that notification bell next to it, and you will get notified the second those videos are available. Very appreciative to any of you current subscribers and anybody who is already a part of the Savage fam. Hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you guys next time.